All right, can you tell me if it's recording on yours? Because I didn't get the little message. Perfect. Okay. Share screen.
Do you start it?
I started the recording, but we can cut it out. Okay, so this is our BioBlitz case study by Elise and Alyssa.
To start off with our vertebrate, we have an eastern cottontail. These rabbits are herbivores, and the average lifespan is about 3 years, give or take based on their environment. That lifespan can range. Obviously, the bunnies that live in the woods are more likely to live shorter years than those who are domestic bunnies or live on college campuses like Penn State. For the most part, they like to hide in vegetation during the day, but are most active at night. This explains why I see them everywhere at night on my journey from the White Building to my dorm in West. An adaptation these bunnies do for survival for the environment is by juking the predator by running away in zigzags. Or when spooked by people like me who just want to pet it, dash into the nearby bushes to take cover, or take a few hops away to distance themselves. Their big ears also help them distinguish how close an object is away from them. The importance of Easter bunnies have to humans is they bring us uncontainable joy as we admire them as we do on the campus lawns. In fact, I have a personal connection with this bunny shown in this image. I say hi to him and his wife, grazing together every night when I walk back from the library to West. They like to eat late at night, and I feed them lettuce I have in my fridge just for them.
Okay, and then we have the bumblebee for our next one. So the bumblebee originates from Europe and was introduced to North America in the 1600s. And I found the bumblebee that is shown above when I was walking through the Arboretum, and sadly it was coming to that end of the 28-day life cycle for a bee. And in a beehive, it's pretty much regardless of the species, all female. So you have your queen bee who's in charge of everybody, and then you have the worker bees who work and gather pollen that they eventually turn into that honey that we all love. And then you have the nurse bee that takes care of the larva. And male bees are pretty useless because they're only really used for mating, and they're kind of annoyance to the rest of the hive. They kind of want them out of there. So although a bee's life cycle is pretty short, they do so much in such little time. So they are quite amazing creatures. Bumblebees do have 18 chromosomes and use a sex determination system called haploid diploidy. And the male bees are developed from an unfertilized egg and are haploid, while the female bees come from fertilized eggs and are diploid. Bumblebees are commonly found in states with cooler climates. So over time, they've developed a thicker, fuzzy looking hair to keep them warm here. And then as said in that additional information bit, bumblebees and mainly every other bee is vital to human survival. Your basic food sources come from crops, plants, and animals. And without bees to pollinate the plants, we would not end up surviving because we got to eat something. So we would have a dramatic decrease in the organic and natural grown foods. And we can't exactly live off of processed foods, but bumblebees tend to be relatively harmless as they only sting you when they're threatened. So you got a pretty good shot of just being friends with him because, rip Jerry, he was climbing on me and didn't even sting me. So rip Jerry.
So then our flowering plant was dandelions. So they're described as those annoying yellow flowers that dads try to exterminate from their lawns every May and claim to be their worst enemy. However, good things can be made out of them, like how their roots, leaves, flowers can be used for food, medicine, and coloring dye. For reproduction, they reproduce asexually by apomixis, which is where a seeds have its own parachute that is carried by the wind to spread the seeds across the land. This explains why they spread like wildfire across grassy areas. Again, the flowers do not need to be pollinated to form seeds. Additionally, dandelions are resilient to soil conditions. In fact, they can grow just fine through a sidewalk crack. In relation to other organisms in their environment, birds, insects, and butterflies rely on them as a source of nectar or food. An interesting fact I've learned about dandelions is they act like sunflowers, where they open up their flowers in the morning and close them at night. Sometimes, even on the cloudy days, they don't open up at all. In the pictures shown, it was a partly cloudy day, so some of the flowers were open, and as you can see, some were closed. Our non-flowering plant was Bryopsida. Within the class of plants of the Bryophyta contains most of the common moss species found in either damp or dry environments, mostly in moist, shady places. By providing a surface cover to the forest floor and absorbing water, They help control soil erosion. Moss is extremely similar to other types of plants. It needs sunlight, water, and nutrients to acquire energy and then partake in photosynthesis. Water nutrients are absorbed directly through the leaves like structures that you can see above. The lifespan of moss can range from about 12 years and is produced by female reproductive cells traveling to the male, and many times this is done in water as it easily flows from one to another. Moss is pretty important in regards to the development of new ecosystems. They help to soak up rainfall, maintain moisture in the soil, and can even keep the area around them pretty humid. It turns out this allows other plants around them to thrive. And then our fungus. So this is actually little nest polyspore. This piece of wood was found with this side shown in the photo face down at Alumni Hall. The seed cap was used to identify the fungi present on the stick and was able to identify the white cupped fungus. This identified as little nest polyspore, or its scientific name Trimedes contrifera. Unfortunately, I was unable to identify the cool looking green bubbly stuff, but I wish I could, thinking it would be interesting to find out what it was. Moving down the taxonomic rank, the fungus belongs to the phylum Basiumycota, the order Polyporase, and family Polyporceae. Little nest polypore is a sabrotic fungi that grows on dead pieces of wood and can be found growing in clusters on branches and around logs and stumps. This makes sense considering Biomycota are very good at breaking down large plant cell wall polymers like lignin found in decaying wood. Our overall experience, we enjoyed doing this project. It was quite interesting to go to nature and actively find things that are most times overlooked as we walk along campus. The Seek Act helped with getting somewhere with identifying organisms by their family, but for the most part, it was really hard to go further with that. Again, I had to take multiple photos and different angles, especially with the fungus and some of the non-vascular plants was really hard to identify through the Seek Act, but it did get us somewhere. The hardest category to find, again, was the fungus, especially not even just identifying it, but where to find it as far as like remulching going on around campus. And that's where they covered up a lot of where fungus can grow. The easiest was obviously the invertebrates and vertebrates, so like the bunny, and it was the most fun learning about these in the presentation, as you can tell from the memes we included, and they are pretty easy to find since they all are always out and about. Advice to other scientists would be like, there's definitely more diversity in woods or rural areas rather than a college campus or suburban neighborhoods. So if they want to find either more species or different kinds of organisms, they're better off going somewhere where it's more abundant.
Okay, and then we go into our future research section. So our proposed question that we wanted to ask was about the bumblebee species. So we kind of wanted to ask, how is human life that we've been living impacted overall like bee health? Like what have we done that has, in a sense, kind of screwed them over? So when thinking about how food gets to our table, we normally don't really think like how it went all the way back. We kind of just think like, okay, I went to the grocery store and I cleaned my food and then I cooked it and I ate it. And that's great, but we don't think about how these bees have, pollinated each of these plants and taken time with their little busy bodies trying to, get this food to our table without even thinking about it, because they're just doing it for themselves and we are taking their products in a sense. So we just kind of wanted to think about how, in a sense, we have done things like using pesticides and all of that kind of stuff, like our pollution, how that goes back to them at that very beginning of that process. It doesn't start at the grocery store, it kind of starts with them. So not only has our human behavior changed several aspects about planet Earth, we've truly been affecting a bee's health by carrying out this like oblivious lifestyle. So human life has had a negative impact on a bee's neurological process, as well as the evolutionary bits due to recent additions and their personal and environmental stressors. So in return, we can hypothesize that without bees, these shiny bright fruits that we see at these grocery stores could possibly be no longer, and we won't have as many organic products. So in my research, I was able to find this diagram. And this diagram looks a little bit complex, but it really is just a bee's brain. So seeing how different things like these orange boxes, these are the stressors, we can see how natural stressors, some like the viruses or the diet restrictions, how that plays effect on them. But then you also have the additional pesticides and heavy metals from pollution that also play a role into screwing up things inside their head. And it kind of just shows how it's all connected, how bees and humans are connected and how humans are connected to bees. So like, for example, we can see like some of the heavy metals do affect their color and motion and light and dark, which is really important to a bee when they're flying and harvesting these things like pollen and nectar and whatnot, and how it plays a role into them getting back to their hive or even being able to function on a daily basis. So then, one, two, four. We have our experiment that we want to carry out. So our control group would be bees who are kept in a clean environment and go through their life cycle and multiple life cycles with a bee of no pesticides, no heavy metals, and trying to limit the amount of disease that comes into them. But obviously that's a natural thing and not something that we can necessarily test. But then in our tested group, we would keep bees in a typical urban area that we see. And this is where we get those like different types of stressors and all of that. But what we're looking for is the overall lifespan comparison between the control and the tested, if there's any navigation issues due to these stressors, and differences in brain function, cognition, and behaviors.
And then these were our references.
Sick.